So I just want to welcome everyone who's on the call today. We are grateful for your participation, and we are grateful for Jed Surio to be presenting today. I'm going to start us off with just some brief housekeeping notes. First of all, to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded and that the recording will be posted to YouTube. Secondly, live captioning is available, and I will post the link just in a second into the chat box where you can access the captioning. And our presenter will be accepting questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question throughout or at the end, you can use the Q&A feature, which should be an icon at the bottom of your screen, and you can type your question in and we'll answer it at the end. And if you have any technical issues or any questions, you can message us using the chat box, or you can send me an email at admin@calmuseums.org, and I'll do my best to help you. And I'm going to pass it off to Mark, who is one of CAM's board members and the co-chair of CAM's Strategic Action Committee, to introduce our program today.
Thank you, Lacey. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here and to welcome you to this program. As we begin this event, we acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of our various regions. A land acknowledgement is a critical step towards working with Native communities to secure meaningful partnership and inclusion in the stewardship and protection of their cultural resources and homelands. Our institutions were founded upon exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. We honor and are grateful for the land we occupy and recognize the ongoing damage of settler colonialism. Let's take a moment to honor these ancestral grounds as we are collectively gathered upon and support the resilience and the strength that all Indigenous peoples have shown worldwide. I am on the traditional territory of the Chumash and Tongva peoples, and I encourage you as we get started to name and acknowledge the Native peoples where you are located in the chat box. Thank you. Before we begin the program, I wanted to acknowledge some of our sponsors and thank them for supporting these initiatives. The Lunch and Learn program is supported in part by Associated Foundations Incorporated in memory of Barry Herlihy. The CAM Fellowship program is supported by the Getty Foundation, and live captioning today is supported in part by the National Arts and Disability Center at the University of California, Los Angeles, and Ability Central. Our speaker this afternoon is Jed Surio. Jed is from Manila in the Philippines and is currently the collections assistant at the Wende Museum of the Cold War here in Los Angeles. In 2018, he completed his Getty Merrow undergraduate internship and the J. Paul Getty Museum, and has since held positions at the Michael Asher Foundation and Hauser and Wirth. He has a BA in art history from Cal State LA and is an incoming graduate student at Tulane University, where he'll be studying art history with a focus on 18th and 19th century Europe. As we're here to listen to his thoughts and what he will share with us, I will turn it right over to him, and I'm eager to hear what he has to share as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Let me go share my screen right now. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. And sorry, I'm a little nervous, but I'm here to talk about a case study I worked on based on a conference session that I attended at the CAM conference. So the full title of the case study that I wrote is called Medium, Meaning, and Memory, a community-based archive at the heart of local artistic identity. This was in collaboration with Self-Help Graphics and Art. So thank you to Alexa and Lulu, and thank you to Lacey and everyone at CAM for being so supportive in the process. So the conference session, I should start with that. It was called Archives, Collective Memory and Collections Building in Contemporary Cultural Institutions. So the panel here was made up of different arts organizations, different museum professionals and library professionals. And they talked about the different types of community-based collecting. One of which that I thought was really interesting was how LACMA would collect oral history videos of their employees. I thought that that was a really interesting take on the idea of community. And I know that for the Huntington, they do a lot of rapid response collecting depending on current situations. And part of the goal of the session was to promote diversity and inclusion within museum collections. I know that this is something that's very important for many of us at our own institutions. And I hope that as we take a look at Self-Help Graphics, we can see how they do that and what we can apply to our own institution. They also talked about memory and how it relates to archives. And I thought that that was a very interesting way of connecting an archive to communities, is to go for the idea of memory and how it relates to everyone. So to start, I should talk about what is Self-Help Graphics. So they are located in Boyle Heights, just east of the Los Angeles River. They're an arts organization, although that's sort of an oversimplification. They kind of do a little bit of everything. Yes, they are an archive, but they're also a community center. They're a studio, an exhibition space. They do so much. So to call them an archive is probably a little limiting, but we're definitely going to focus on that and how it informs the rest of their works. So they work a lot with Chicanx and Latinx artists. This is an important part of the organization, and they focus on social justice and artistic experimentation. They're always pushing art and community and trying to find ways to connect both of them. And lastly, they cultivate talent and identity. And this, when I say identity, that could mean so many different things. It could mean community identity, artistic identity, cultural identity as well. So to understand what they do today, I think it's also important to know their history, because it's so intertwined with the work that they do now. So it was actually formed in the early 70s. It was the middle of the Cold War. The Vietnam War had begun in the 1960s. And that led to a lot of anti-war sentiments among many Americans. In southwestern cities, particularly, such as Los Angeles, there was a lot of Chicano activism happening at that time. They were fighting for equality and empowerment among the many things that they were fighting for. And around the same time, Self-Help Graphics was forming in Boyle Heights, and they really mirrored what the Chicanos were doing at the time. Boyle Heights had a lot of oppression. Basically, in a video of Self-Help Graphics, the director of the organization, Betty Avila, talks about how there were all these highway constructions happening on the eastern side of Los Angeles, and so it was sort of pushing out the Chicanos and the Latinos. And so as Sister Karen Bacalero, who is in the top left corner, as she came in and she wanted to help, she was joined by artists from the community, and she wanted to find a way to sort of create equity in the community and fix the disproportionate lack of access to the arts in Boyle Heights. She was trained under Sister Karita Kent, who is in the bottom right corner. You might know her from your art history courses as the printmaking, or like the rebellious printmaking nun. So she was trained under Sister Karita Kent, and so she took what she learned and she formed self-help graphics and tried to help the community. And so she did this with Screenprinting. The reason for this was that it was a very bold vehicle that was democratic and accessible. That was something that I learned from the conference session. And it really resonated with me because it was something, because Screenprinting since the 15th century has been such an important way of telling stories. We see it in early modern Europe as a way of dispersing biblical narratives to illiterate populations. We see it in German Expressionism in the early 20th century, where a lot of workers were using prints to sort of fight for equality and fair wages. And we see it now here at Self-Help Graphics as their mode of storytelling. And the reason logistically why this was a good idea is, like, on top of it being a great medium of storytelling and sharing narratives, it is easy to teach. It's relatively inexpensive, and it doesn't need a lot of resources. You know, if you've taken a sculpture class or a pottery class somewhere, or a painting class, you know that materials are expensive. And with Screenprinting, it was one that was powerful, but also very feasible. And it helped with sharing of knowledge and community empowerment and political mobilization. And so when I was thinking what they did with Screenprinting, when I was looking into it, I was really interested in how, although we associate Screenprinting now with pop art and the likes of Andy Warhol or activism, or the activism of Sister Karita Kent, those were all very overt and very direct messages that they would show through their prints. But what I liked about Self-Help Graphics was that the artists in East LA, they looked back into their heritage and their pre-Columbian past. They used the momentum of the Chicano movement to sort of empower the community and use Mesoamerican civilizations and the iconography and the symbols from them. They used that to promote social change. And through this, they were slowly forming the artistic identity of the community. And if we think about the artistic identity before Self-Help Graphics, I don't want to go as far to say that there was none, but it definitely, when Self-Help Graphics came about, it became a little bit more unified, and their art had a purpose, and they successfully brought the community together. So in this, in this last image here, I think it's interesting how this is a very direct reference to pre-Columbian iconography, and how this one here, made decades later, is a mix of contemporary symbols with Mesoamerican symbols, such as the jaguar god in the middle, where you have with the jaguar god, which is was really prevalent in the objects of the Mayans and the Olmecs in those civilizations, and it's mixed here with corporate symbols and symbols of peace and change. And when I was looking more into this artwork, I saw that the artist actually was very interested in having the audience see this and think about everything that's in this piece, and hopefully it promotes more peace and understanding. So I thought that was pretty cool. So how did they spread printmaking and community building? They did that through programming. They focus on art and printmaking as their core, but obviously with that, there's lots of variations. They have different types of printmaking. They have different types of programs. They also have exhibitions and workshops to bring people into the community, from the community into the space. They have the Barrio Mobile Art Studio, which is, I guess it's like a workshop that can be hired or that you can hire, and they'll come to your community and teach printmaking or have workshops. They do a lot of work with the census. They've been doing a lot of work with the census recently. And what I thought was really good with this is that they didn't just make posters like, hey, like fill out the census. They really used art as a way of educating rather than just having it be about awareness. So through art and graphics, they would talk about your rights as an immigrant or something like that, and how that relates to the census, what you should say or what you shouldn't say about citizenship and things like that. Dia de los Muertos, which is a very popular celebration. I'm sure most of us have heard of it here, but they have one of the oldest celebrations in the country, and definitely one of the more prominent ones. They've really sort of shaped that, and they've really turned it into what we know about Dia de los Muertos today. So if you're outside of LA or California and you see a really big Dia de los Muertos celebration, it most likely was influenced in part by self-help graphics. So their anchor program, however, on top of everything, their anchor program is the professional printmaking program. This is sort of like an atelier, peer-to-peer sharing, sharing of knowledge and training. So an artist would be in residency and work with a master printer. So again, we're seeing the sharing of knowledge, of ideas, of culture. And through this, some prints are kept at Self-Help Graphics, some are sold to raise funds for the program, but then some are sent across the country to different archives, the main one being the California Ethnic and Multicultural Archive at UC Santa Barbara. And here the prints are used by students and researchers. So it not only increases the scope of the art of Boyle Heights, or at least like their audience, it also helps with the artist growth and leads to more representation within the Los Angeles art world and the American art world as a whole. These prints here, I believe this came from the professional printmaking program. If I'm wrong, Alexa or Lulu, let me know in the chat. But I think this is a diptych where we again see that these artists are working with complex social issues, and they're using prints and printmaking and the help and support of self-help graphics to make sense and of these issues, and to share their experiences. So the archive itself, Self-Help Graphics is starting to increase their space and their storage. They're definitely trying to bring it online to increase the reach of this archive. They want to preserve the identities, the memories, the histories of these artists, and they would like the archive to be an educational resource for the community so that they can continue to make art but still honor the history of that community. And I like how I like when sorry I liked it when I was speaking with Alexa and Lulu, my collaborators, about this. They mentioned how they activate the archives to activate the community, and I thought that was a really great way to talk about one's archive. So with COVID-19, obviously the space is inaccessible, but I love that they still stayed true to being focused on the art, the artists, and their community. Immediately, they began to collect resources, and they worked really hard to make sure that their community was okay. So I think it's a testament to how dedicated they are helping. And they also do a lot of work with protests. Obviously, this kind of goes back to the days of the Chicano movement and Chicano activism, and that really never left their core. So they've been doing a lot of sign making and sign pickups. They use art as activism, and you can, because of COVID, you can't go and make the signs, but you can definitely, oh, sorry, one sec. Oh. One sec, everyone. Okay, so anyway, the Wende Museum of the Cold War, that is where I currently work now. As you've heard earlier, I am the collections assistant here. And our next exhibition actually deals a lot with the idea of memory, and I think that it really parallels self-help graphics. So the next exhibition is called Transformations, Living Room, Flea Market, Museum, Art. So it takes these discarded socialist objects, and this is an oversimplification, but it takes it through the different contexts in which we find it in. So one would be like an East German living room, into a flea market, into a museum. And then the last one is where we have contemporary artists in LA make work related to the exhibition and the collection. So the first is Chelle Barbour. She is a Black woman artist living in LA, and this is not the first work that she's done for the museum, but for this exhibition, she's made a sort of a response to COVID-19, and she uses images from our collection and mixes it in with representations of the Black female body in media, and she uses that to make these, what she calls Afro-surrealist collages. Another one is one by Gonzales-Day. This photograph also uses images from the collection to talk about themes that were prevalent before and today. These are sculptures and busts of Vladimir Lenin and of workers, and talking again about power, division, class. And he tries to make sense of these universal themes that could help us understand the past and the present. And so in conclusion, I just want to say that things I learned from self-help graphics, it's that community is at the core of everything. I think the sharing of knowledge is important, and it helps us shape the cultural landscape of our communities and our cities. We also have to be dedicated to preserving these narratives and these memories, because that is what will help our archives grow and to flourish. And hopefully there's something from this presentation that you can apply to your own institution. Thank you.
Thanks, Jed. If there is anyone that has any questions for Jed, feel free to write them in the Q&A or in the chat box. You know, we're right at 12:30, so we can stay on for a couple of minutes longer if anyone has any questions. And in the meantime, I'll just let everyone know. Well, first of all, I want to say a thank you to Jed. As was discussed at the beginning, Jed is one of our CAM Fellows this year, and we are so grateful to you, Jed, and the work that you've done. We're so grateful to Self-Help Graphics and Art for collaborating with you on this project. And I know I personally loved learning about their work and working with all of you. It does look like we have a question from Jadwin. What is their community engagement process?
The engagement process. I think it starts with the youth. In some senses, I think that they have a lot of summer camps and youth workshops, and then they also they reach out to everyone to join their programs, and I think that that's probably a simple way of answering that.
Great, thank you. I wrote this in the chat box, but if you want to learn more, Jed also published an article, this case study that's available on CAM's website. I wanted to just close with, to let everyone know about our upcoming programs this summer. We have other CAM fellows giving their case study webinars on June 25th, July 9th, and July 23rd. And this, the other dates are more webinars based on sessions that were presented earlier this year at CAM's conference as part of CAM's Lunch and Learn series. So you can find all that on CAM's website. And if you ever have any questions, please feel free to email us. And one last time, I'll just say thank you, Jed. Well, you did wonderful work.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone who participated.